You could say that hot hatchbacks are a dying breed in India. That's because there was a time when you had the Polo GT TSIs, the Punto Bhatts, the Baleno RSs in this country. But now, if you want a hot hatchback, this is the only option that you're left with. This is the Hyundai i20 N-Line. Or is it because what you see here is the brand new Skoda Kylaq? Now, of course, they market it as a compact SUV, but if you scratch beneath the surface, you'll find out that this shares its underpinnings with the brand new 6th generation Volkswagen Polo in global markets. So this is close to being a hot hatch. It's a similar story with the Maruti Suzuki Fronx Turbo. Now this, of course, is based on the same platform as the Baleno, and it also features that same booster jet 1-liter engine that used to come with the Baleno RS earlier. So underneath, this is also a hot hatchback of sorts. Now the question is, which one of these three covers the most bases for a hot hatch in India? Well, that's what we're here to find out. We have lined up a series of exhaustive tests to find out the winner in the most objective way possible. But there's a problem, and that's it's a hot day. I'm feeling a bit lazy, so I could definitely do with some help.
And help is definitely at hand. I will help Shivank on testing all these vehicles, and because it's a hot hatch for India, it needs to do a lot. It's your one vehicle which has to prove itself on various parameters and not just performance. So today, while Shivank will talk about the handling and the performance of these vehicles, I will help him test these vehicles on the basis of the features you get, their value for money quotient, practicality, and of course, the comfort levels present in these vehicles. But before we begin, I would just request you to hit that subscribe button because we put in so much effort and we know a lot of you watch it, but only a few subscribe. So make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video if you like all the effort that you see here. And now, let's begin with the tests.
Let's start with performance and let's start with some headline figures. Now, all three of these are powered by 1-liter 3-cylinder turbocharged petrol engines. Now, the i20 N-Line is the most powerful because it produces 118 bhp, and it's followed by the new Kylaq as it produces 114 bhp. Now, the Fronx, well, it is the least powerful of the bunch as it produces only 99 bhp. It's also down on torque because the peak torque on this thing is 148 Newton meters. The i20 is 172 Newton meters and the Kylaq is 178 Newton meters. But there is a catch because the Fronx is also the lightest of the bunch as it's 200 kilograms lighter than the Kylaq and the i20 N-Line. And that should definitely help it close the gap with these two in terms of outright acceleration. Now coming to the gearbox options, well, you get both automatic and manual transmission options in all of these cars. Now the Fronx gets a 6-speed 80 and a 5-speed manual transmission, whereas the Kylaq gets a 6-speed 80 and a 6-speed manual as well. The i20 N-Line on the other hand gets a 6-speed manual and a 7-speed DCT. So this is the only car of the bunch that gets a dual clutch transmission. Now again, on this occasion, we asked all the manufacturers to provide us with the manual transmission versions of all these cars, but only Maruti obliged because they have sent the manual transmission version, but Skoda and Hyundai, well, they've sent the automatic. Well, in terms of outright acceleration, I don't think it will make a lot of difference, but of course, we have the acceleration runs ready for you guys. So let's quickly find out which one of these three is the quickest. In terms of outright acceleration, the Fronx didn't disappoint. It clocked 0 to 100 in 10.8 seconds, which makes it the second quickest accelerating car here. Because it was a manual, it allowed us to launch the car hard at high revs, but then with the traction control turned off, it couldn't stop spinning its wheels in the first gear. You can clearly see and hear its tires begging for mercy. As for the engine, the booster jet loves to be revved and it's undoubtedly the most free revving unit of the three. The other thing we noticed was its short first and second gear ratios and a rather conservative 6000 rpm rev limiter. So if you want to extract maximum performance, you have to be quick with your shifts. And that's not a problem at all because its 5-speed transmission with its short throws and light clutch action is an absolute beast to use. In normal driving conditions though, this engine suffers from a fair bit of turbo lag below 2000 rpm. Of the three engines here, the booster jet feels the weakest at low engine speeds. It also has the narrowest power band with all of its grunt concentrated between 2500 to 4500 rpm. The top end performance feels a bit compromised compared to the other two. Thanks to its overly protective dual clutch transmission, the i20 N-Line's engine can't be revved beyond 1800 rpm at the time of the launch, and that meant there was a brief pause before its transmission allowed the engine to unleash its full performance. This delay cost it some time initially, but thanks to its superior power to weight ratio and lightning quick shifts, it makes up for the lost ground. The i20 N-Line clocked the fastest 0 to 100 time as it took only 10.2 seconds to cross the mark. The i20's GDI unit has superb mid and top end performance, and it's also the highest revving engine of the bunch since it can rev all the way up to 6500 rpm. Having said that, it somehow doesn't feel engaging enough. This is primarily down to its refinement because the higher you rev it, the noisier it gets. On the other hand, while the DCT is quick during outright acceleration, it's a bit dim-witted when it's left to its own devices. During a quick overtake, you'll notice that the kickdown is slow and it doesn't drop gears with the kind of urgency you expect from a hot hatch. Thankfully, the large and chunky paddle shifters come to the rescue as they are quite responsive. Having said that, this dual clutch transmission doesn't hold onto a gear even in sport mode and shifts up automatically at 6500 rpm. The i20 is the only car here which gets a sporty sounding exhaust, although you can only hear it when you're outside the car. When you're driving, you can barely hear it over the engine's drone. The Kylaq is the heaviest of the lot and it shows in its acceleration. With a time of 11.2 seconds to 100, it was the slowest car of the lot. However, that's not the full story, because if I have to be honest, this TSI motor is the most superior as well as the most engaging powertrain here. The way it revs, sounds and performs, it's pure magic. Of course, it too suffers from turbo lag at low engine speeds, but once the engine revs past 1500 rpm, this motor comes on song and how. There is a surge of power that keeps on building all the way up to the red line. Its top end is simply addictive. The drivability is also impressive and so is the refinement, especially in the AT version. However, since this is a torque converter and not a DSG, it won't hold gears for you near the red line, meaning it shifts up automatically at around 6200 rpm even in manual mode. That said, the paddle shifters are responsive and make for an engaging drive. If there's one gripe, is that the transmission feels quite jumpy at low or stop and go speeds. It's almost too eager to lurch the car forward, and that's quite annoying in traffic. On the flip side, this eagerness helps it during full bore acceleration runs as there's no delay from the transmission like it was in the i20.
The Fronx is refined, it has got the performance. The Kylaq is my favorite because it's the most refined, the engine feels the most lively and it also seems to enjoy when you rev it. The i20, well, it doesn't seem to enjoy. You know, the engine on that thing feels quite thrummy at higher RPMs and it's also the noisiest of the lot. So it feels like that car, it's not enjoying being thrashed. Whereas the TSI motor, well, it sings and dances along all the way.
Next up, it was time to find out which one of these offers the best handling and driving dynamics. And for that, we decided to take all three contenders to a go-kart track. For this test, we rang our friends at Formula Karting, who run karting facilities in Noida and Pune, and spent half a day pounding these cars at their Noida track. At 770 meters long and 8 meters wide, this track is one of the largest go-kart facilities in the country. Its tight and technical layout makes it ideal to test the agility and handling of small cars. And not to mention, it's also a heck of a lot of fun
to drive here. The plan was simple and straightforward. 3 laps each, 1 standing start and 2 flying laps in all 3 cars, followed by comparison of lap times. To extract every ounce of performance from their 3-pot turbo petrol engines, we again decided to turn the ESC and air conditioning off in all 3 cars before setting the times. First up was the i20 N-Line. Given its lowered and stiffer suspension, better aerodynamics and stronger acceleration, the i20 N-Line was the hot favorite going into this round. However, while the i20's taut suspension and sharp steering were best suited for the job, it was let down massively by its C8 Secura drive tires, which squealed and screeched all the way, resulting in uncontrollable understeer. The i20 undoubtedly felt the most agile during quick direction changes and had the sharpest turn-in, but there's simply no grip from the tires. The transmission also shares some of the blame. In the tightest part of the track, it lacked the intuition to downshift quickly, costing it precious time on corner exits. The Kylaq matched the i20 pound for pound in terms of handling without being all over the place. Despite being a high-riding SUV, the Kylaq had negligible body roll and the suspension felt taut yet absorbent. The chassis balance and the grip levels were impressive, giving me the confidence to carry more speed into turn 1, which is the fastest corner of the track. It posted its fastest lap times with clinical precision. The steering too was direct and precise, offering impressive feedback. It almost felt like a hydraulic unit. Similarly, the engine and transmission were inch perfect. Whether going up or down the gears, the drivetrain was almost telepathic. It knew precisely what to do at each instance. And while the i20 N-Line has disc brakes on all 4 corners, it was the Kylaq's brakes that felt stronger and offered a more progressive pedal feel. Now, I expected the Kylaq to surprise us, but it simply exceeded our expectations, especially on the track. As for the Fronx, it felt out of its depth alongside the other two. Of course, it has a light and communicative chassis, but the suspension wasn't up for the job as it felt the softest of the lot and there was considerable body roll too. On top of that, the driver's seat of the Fronx has virtually no side support. Another thing that we noticed is that despite running on identical Goodyear rubber as the Kylaq, the Fronx surprisingly didn't quite offer the same grip levels. Though, to be fair, the Kylaq does benefit from a wider 205 section contact patch versus the Fronx 195s. The biggest problem with the Fronx, at least for me, was the steering. Even though it's acceptably precise, it feels lifeless and slow to self-center. The manual transmission, on the other hand, offered better control over proceedings, but the turbo lag, followed by a sudden burst of power at around 2000 rpm, resulted in a hairy experience at the track. And to make matters worse, the twiddly pedals with virtually no gap or foot grip made hunting for a fast lap time even more difficult. Make no mistake, the Fronx Turbo is a quick car, but it demands tidy, measured inputs to extract the best from it.
We have seen the lap times, and again, it's the Kylaq that has surprised us because it turned out to be the fastest of this bunch. Now, I was expecting more from the i20 N-Line because I thought it had the package, the handling, but it was let down by its tires solely. Now, the Fronx Turbo, well, of course, it is a nice balance, but I thought this had the most body roll of the bunch. And you have to be really clean with your inputs to put a good lap time with this car. So overall, based on the lap times, the Kylaq is number 1, followed by the i20 N-Line, and the Fronx is dead last.
Let me start off with the quality levels of all 3 vehicles first, and the good news here is that none of them have been shoddily made. All of them have pretty high levels of fit and finish, so that is good. But speaking about the Fronx, it definitely feels like it's the most geared towards comfort and maybe everyday use, and that is apparent in these fabric seats, in the soft touch material that you see here in the door pad. So that also looks really good, and you have a lot of these glossy finishes all around, which definitely give it a more premium, a more comfort oriented feel. The Kylaq, while sporting a modern design, is full of hard plastic surfaces pretty much everywhere, which I don't personally like, and even the door doesn't feel as solid on the inside. The i20 N-Line, staying true to the N-Line image, comes with the most sporty cabin of the lot. It gets this all-black interior with red accents all around, and even the pattern on the seat looks really nice. Then you also have this very sporty steering wheel, which is good to hold and comes with properly big paddle shifters, which are pretty fun to use. And if you want a sporty hot hatch, then this is definitely the best of both worlds by bringing good levels of quality and also giving you that image of being in a sporty cabin. However, if you want something more comfort oriented, then the Fronx is your go-to option. The Kylaq, sadly due to its all plastic interior, scores the least in this segment. If you look at the prices of these three vehicles, you will notice that the top end trim of the Kylaq is the most expensive in this lot. But by being the most expensive and also the newest, it gets the most in terms of features as well. While a lot of the features in these vehicles are same, but the Kylaq steps ahead of the other two because it comes with powered as well as ventilated front seats, which is a big boon, especially in this sweltering heat. And the power adjustment definitely makes life a lot more easier. It makes your seating adjustment a lot more easier. So that is something which is really good with the Kylaq. Also, it comes with a 5-star BN-CAP rating, which makes it the only vehicle here to get that 5-star rating. And while the i20 also gets 6 airbags and the Fronx also gets 6 airbags, in the Fronx, I must mention, you do not get 6 airbags in the lower variant. It's only the i20 and the Kylaq which come with 6 airbags right from the base model. In the battle of the screens, the Fronx comes the last because it gets the smallest screen at 9 inches. This comes second with a 10-inch screen, and the i20 N-Line leads with a 10.25-inch unit. But if I talk about the UI, then the UI looks the most modern in the Kylaq. It has these very colorful icons and it just looks a little bit nicer, while the other two functional, but they look a little bit dated. But in terms of the menu layout, I still prefer the simpler version that you see in the i20 N-Line. Oddly enough, while the Fronx and the Kylaq offer wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectivity, the i20 does not. And while the i20 and the Kylaq get a sunroof, the Fronx does not. It is the i20 N-Line which gets a open sunroof, a voice-operated sunroof.
Opening the sunroof.
Now, I'll admit the Fronx is taking a little bit of a beating in the features department because it is not as well equipped as the other two, but it claws back some advantage by bringing in two very important features which the others do not have. The first of them is a head-up display unit. The other feature is even more important and even more useful in daily driving, and that is a 360-degree camera. So you get a proper view of all your surroundings, and this makes it very easy to park this car or get it out of tight spots. Talking about the camera quality, the Kylaq sits the lowest, then the Fronx is somewhere in the middle, and the i20 N-Line is the one with the best quality camera. Yes, it just has a rear facing camera, but the quality, the feed that you get from it is the clearest. And if you look at the instrument consoles, well, the i20 and the Kylaq both get a fully digital instrument cluster, which definitely looks nice, looks modern. The Fronx is the only one which comes with a semi-digital setup, but I think I prefer this in here because especially if you're talking about performance vehicle, about hot hatches, then you need big dials to show you your RPM and your speed. They're more legible and they just give you that bit of a tactile feel that you would want in a fast car. So if you want features, then you should definitely go for the Kylaq because it offers you the most. And even if you go for the base variant, you are getting a lot of features in that. The base variant of that vehicle is the cheapest of the lot, and yet you get a lot of important features like driver side seat height adjustment, tilt and telescopic steering wheel, LED headlights. All those you get from the base variant itself. To kick off the practicality section, well, we'll talk about the seating space and how comfortable it is in the second row of these vehicles. Right now, I am in the Kylaq, and this looks the most like an SUV out of these three, and that also reflects in its proportions because it is the widest and it is the tallest. So inside, while you can see I'm 6 feet tall and I have plenty of headroom, and especially thanks to this coupe, I have some extra headroom area, which is great. I also have great under thigh support in this bench. But as you can also see, the knee room and the leg room is not a lot, and the front seat has been set to my driving preference. So in terms of the knee room and leg room, the Fronx and i20 do actually a much better job, but they sort of lack in the under thigh support area, and especially in the i20, the headroom is not that great. The Fronx does strike a much better balance of width and of also giving you enough room. And like I mentioned, this is the widest of the lot, but you still cannot seat 3 people abreast on this bench, and that's partly due to the fact that on the edges you have these plastic pillars which sort of take away some of the seat cushion area. So that is a bit of a problem. And also the backrest angle feels the best in the i20 N-Line. In the Fronx and in this, it is slightly too upright for my liking. It's not fully uncomfortable, but it is a little bit upright. We also did a quick ground clearance test to see which car would be best at coping with our ailing roads. Now, people often think that hatchbacks have terrible ground clearance, but that is not always the case. Despite having the lowest ground clearance figure of the lot, the i20 N-Line did not actually bottom out even with 4 people inside. Sure, you will feel more at ease with the extra millimeters of clearance the Fronx and Kylaq have, but the i20, for most use cases, is not going to be a problem. Mileage is also a key factor for cars in this price bracket, and unsurprisingly, it is the Fronx with its mild hybrid system that turned out to be the most frugal. When driven with a heavy right foot, the Fronx returned around 10 kmpl, the i20 around 9, and the Kylaq was the most thirsty, giving around 7 to 8 kilometers to a litre. When driven gently, the Fronx can go up to 15 kilometers per litre, while the other two also see a relative increase.
So Akash, we are done with the test, and based on the results, it's the Kylaq that has won this competition. But again, if you're an enthusiast, you don't always think from your head. Your heart is also involved in that process. So is the Kylaq the one that you'd buy from your heart as well?
While I definitely see its appeal for a younger person, I would still pick the Fronx amongst these three, because as our viewers and you know that I tend to go for the more boring but the more kind of practical choices. So I think it does it for me. It is a more rounded package, and even the performance I really like. Shivank, what is your pick?
Well, again, when I came into this test, I definitely had a soft corner for the i20 N-Line because I thought it is the most hot hatchback of the bunch. It definitely looks the part, and I think this was going to be the car that would win this comparison based on the test that we carried out so far. But ultimately, I think over this test, I've realized that the Kylaq is a better package overall. And I think I'm really kind of gravitating towards the Kylaq now. And it's going to be my pick also, even if I think from my heart.
Okay, Shivank, great choice, but let me remind you that this is the most expensive of this bunch. At 14.40 lakh, the top model costs the most. Also, the efficiency is going to be terrible because it's not as efficient as the other two. And the biggest thing, it looks the most like an SUV and not like a hatchback.
Well, I have a solution for all of that because first of all, it's good that you reminded us of the pricing because this one is definitely the most expensive at the top end. But when you check the base versions of these cars, well, this is the most affordable. The starting price for the Kylaq base is 7.89 lakh and you get a manual transmission and the same 1 litre TSI engine. Whereas the i20 I think starts at around 10 lakh rupees and same goes for the Fronx. So the starting price for these cars are higher for sure, and that's by a substantial margin. Now, the other thing, of course, fuel efficiency. I get it. It's not the most efficient, but I can live with that because all of these cars, they're turbo petrol engines. They're very, very sensitive to your throttle input. So these are quite evenly matched in that sense. Of course, in this test, the Kylaq was the least efficient, but I think it's not going to pinch me as an enthusiast. And lastly, you talked about it being the most SUV looking. Well, agreed for sure. But then you have saved 2 lakh rupees over the base i20 or the base Fronx. I think you can put lower springs on that car, you can put a body kit, and you can definitely turn it into a hatchback. So that's what I have in mind. And I think, of course, there is a fair bit of work involved to make it look like a hot hatchback, but there's no denying that of this bunch, this is actually the best hot hatchback that you can buy in the country, even though Skoda says that this is an SUV, but we think this is the hottest hatchback that you can buy in the country at the budget end.